Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Dave. Today I'm joined by this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted. How are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
Doing good, man. You know, did my muggle job today, and now I'm ready to hang out with one of my favorite nerds and all these nerds out here to talk
Cool.
about familiars.
Indeed. Familiars is one of those topics that, feel you can do a lot with if you, uh, you know, play it right. Heck, I mean, even Critical Role went and made a game familiar problem that, they put out for free RPG day. I haven't seen anything to show whether or not they've released it thereafter, but I went and found my own copy for free RPG day. Heck, I even ran this here on the channel for a as part of my untraditionally arcane game, just for fun. And I think it'd be thought it was fun to actually let it be a game where they've got to play their familiars.
Yeah, I've other people I know have done something similar with I don't think they played familiars. They might have played like the mascots from Strixhaven.
Okay.
Unless one of the mascots was their familiar. But I remember El Genio talking about it, DM Jazzy Hands on Twitter. And one of the things about familiars in 5e D&D is it is unique to wizards, I'm pretty sure. Like there's a couple like ways you can get a familiar without being a wizard, but really it requires being a pack of a chain warlock. You can kind of do it, and it really is a lesser version with druid expending wild shape as one of the optional rules, which is really just not as good as just being a druid and wild shaping. Um, and then if you take the ritual caster wizard,
Right.
so without expending some resources, it is a lot harder in 5e to get a familiar if you happen to not be a wizard.
But you got to say, like, familiars are a lot of fun. They really are an advantage in a lot of different scenarios, depending upon how you choose to use them, and exploit them or not exploit them, but like how you use them, because they're not really like a physical, tangible thing that needs to eat and sleep and all of this kind of stuff. It's a spirit that creates a body when you call it forth. And my daughter, who's playing a wizard in my current game, she's years old. She is like so many other people that wants the pets and that kind of stuff. And she's like, "Oh, well, I need to go and get things from from my familiar." I'm like, "What do you need to get?" She's like, "Well, it eats, right?" I'm like, "Not really." I'm like, "You can feed it and it will eat stuff, but it doesn't need them to exist." And like, it kind of blew her mind, because
Yeah.
you know that,
Well, that's
that's
because you're
a
always harping on her to feed them guinea pigs.
well, there is that aspect that
So
you
she's
gotta.
like, "This is perfect. I get a pet and I don't have to feed it." I don't know.
So,
I think I would have instilled like a personality trait in that particular familiar
mhm.
that it likes to eat,
Uh,
and pesters G for food on the reg.
I mean, that could be something that develops if her character keeps deciding that they want to feed it. Then just be like, "All right, I'm not working unless I get something."
Do you remember familiars from first edition or second edition?
I don't. When I was in, when we played the earlier editions, I was very much against spellcasters. I've
So
since learned.
so I believe they had more hit points back then than they do now. I believe, or I feel like they had more hit points. And if your familiar died, you lost twice the familiar's hit points. And
Oh,
if you're a low level wizard, you that could take you out. Like you may die from your familiar getting killed.
that is that is harsh.
The only thing I don't remember, maybe somebody in the chat does. We got any old heads in there. I don't remember if it was permanent, if the loss of hit points was permanent, or if you just took it as damage. But still, I mean, like we're talking about when wizards had a D4 for their hit die.
Right.
And if you wanted to play an elf, you had a negative to your constitution. So, matter of fact, only certain races could play a wizard, right?
Yeah,
Um,
no dwarven wizards over here.
you couldn't be a dwarven wizard. Gnomes could only be illusionists. Um, I think elves could be wizards. Humans could be
Hmm.
wizards.
Yep.
And I think that might have been it back in the well, maybe half elves, but that was it back in the day. You're a little starved for choices.
Yeah, I mean it was heavily influenced by the Tolkien lore, and and there was no back then the freedom of choice now, and I mean beyond the rule set of removing the limitations, but when the rules say hard and fast, this is the way it is. We didn't have, or at least maybe other DMs out there might have, but like our DMs are like, nah, it's written in the rules right here. It says you can't do that, so it means you
Yeah.
can't do that. There was no, well, let's break this rule. Like, you didn't break the rules in the handbook or the DMG. Like, you didn't do that.
Yeah, well, I think we did. We were just selective about the rules we were willing to break. That wasn't one of them. Um, the rules. No, so and then third edition. Do you remember familiars from third edition?
Not really.
So, like the number one pick for familiars in third edition for wizards. Do
the
you remember
rat,
what it was?
was it the rat, right?
No, it was the toad. Because
Oh, the
the toad would give you 3 hit points, 3 extra hit points for your wizard, right? And all the other ones gave you like I think most of them were like bonuses to skill checks.
mhm.
I don't think any of them gave you bonuses to saving throws. But except for the toad, the toad, the toad gave you the extra hit points, and also that's one of the like third edition is when they kind of start relaxing some of the rules on like what you could play and what you couldn't play. Because I know that's when Ryan played his dwarven wizard warts, and he had the toad.
we've played a lot of characters over the years. I don't particularly remember Warts, the dwarven wizard.
It
Um,
might have been one of those like sessions that we played, or one of those campaigns that got played for like a session.
a session, or a small handful. There were a lot of games where we made characters and played 1 to 3 sessions, and then it got moved on to somebody else. Uh, but I mean, we made a lot of third edition characters back in the day.
Also, like now, familiars are, I guess, more amorphous and versatile than they were in previous editions, because it's like you don't summon a specific type of creature. You can change it every time you summon it. Like with Critical Role, Caleb would always summon his cat, but occasionally he would change it to something else, and he'd be like,
Mhm.
"Well, I forget the familiar's name, but he's like, well, so and so doesn't like it when I make him do this."
I'm trying to remember what was the cat's name.
I don't know. You would have a better shot at remembering than I
I
did.
mean, we're going on a year since campaign 2 stopped.
Yeah. What?
Frumpkin? I want to say it's Frumpkin.
Frumpkin. That sounds familiar. So it was something like that. If that wasn't it, that's very close. So do you have a favorite creature type for familiars?
Don't. When I look at when I look at the character, it's going to be a situation where, like, I want to find something that fits that particular character. Um, it's not about what do I necessarily like, but what does that particular character want? So, like, you could have, oh, let's make a character who's fey, or a fairy as a race, and be like, well, you could have a butterfly or a dragonfly be your familiar, and that would be kind of cool and very, fey-esque in its beauty. You know, you go with like a dwarven character, then you might be like, oh well, you know literally, can I have a pet rock? Like, and you joke about it, but it's like a minor earth elemental.
Yeah.
Me as Ted, I happen to like squirrels, and my beardomancer that I played in a small campaign that sadly stopped running. I had a very shaggy squirrel that would like nest in my own beard. Um, like you can go in so many different directions. So, like I try not, at least other than the squirrel, I try to like, all right, once I make the character and then decide that they're going to get familiar.
Didn't Ordo make his mustaches familiar?
Yes, he's got a what were they called? We they traveled to the beard dimension. So Ordo Wonderbeard from my untraditionally arcane, he's got a bat that is essentially a mustachio. So some
Uh, but okay, so you guys use like the bat stats.
yeah, yeah. And it was easier to just like do that than be like, oh well, let me quickly replicate something. Uh, and you
I
probably
do feel like one of the familiars stands out amongst all the familiars as actually being a little bit better.
what's
Matter of
that?
fact, one of your characters actually had that familiar. Relian, had it through Ritual Caster.
Mm-hmm,
He had, and he would always summon an owl,
mm-hmm.
and especially for a character that has healing spells, an owl's really good with that flyby attack.
The flyby. Yep.
Because you can drop them in there, and they can drop you can drop your healing spells, your cure wound spells, right in the center of combat, and it just gives you a range on the spell that you wouldn't have had.
Yeah, that's one of those things that like it wasn't an exploitation of what's the best familiar for me to have as a
Well, you
cleric.
really didn't do it, so it didn't matter. Like I think you more or less like had the out, but I don't ever remember you using it for touch spells.
I did it like once, maybe twice.
Yeah.
There was so many little tricks and things that I've learned that I could have done better with Relion.
Yeah. Well, I mean that was your first character
Learn
uh
it
for
full set
5e.
while playing the game.
But yeah, so I think, which is unfortunate too, because like really the owl kind of stands out amongst all of them as being kind of superior. I mean, the other one would be the crab and the bat. They get blind sight, but I think after that, it's pretty lame. Unless your DM lets you have a rat that has filth fever, maybe.
I'm not so sure you want that to happen, but all right.
Well, listen, he only infects you when you get bit by it. It's fine. He's not going to be biting you, hopefully.
Hopefully. So, do you have a favorite familiar, either from a story perspective or mechanicals perspective?
Man, kind of want to figure out how to have Unga summon a familiar so he can have a crab familiar. a
Well,
little
I mean,
so a little maybe a sibling or child of Sheldon.
if you say that loud enough, Robin will hear you, and it will happen.
Yeah. I
Just
don't
say
know if it would be really a great use of my resources as a matter of fact. I don't think that character would meet the requirements for ritual casters. I don't even think I could take it. If
I
there
don't
are
know.
if there's a stat requirement, I'm fairly certain Unga does not have it for intelligence. that wasn't really his thing.
Sure. I mean, there's not a whole lot of intelligence in most of the party. I mean, we lost our party leader, who was our highest intelligence at a.
Well, not anymore. We got a wizard, so he's his.
Well, I was going to say before
Yeah,
just showed up. All right, so it does say intelligence or wisdom of 13 or higher. Um,
dude, I would need 4 points.
so do you have a wisdom of 13?
Yeah, but I think it's dependent upon the class you want to take it for.
Yeah, I'm trying to look.
Yeah,
The
I mean
class
that
you
would be
choose.
cheesy to be like, I
I've
my
al-
I don't know what my wisdom is. I think I have a +1 modifier. It's probably a 12. So you in your game, you actually gave me a special familiar because Uthengard did not have a familiar at the start of the campaign, and you eventually did give me the pet rock familiar.
Did I?
Yeah, Rune.
Oh, that's right. He was a total transformer. He would like, you summon the rock, and he could totally like stand up into a humanoid form. I was inspired by something. I mean,
There was a toy and I think a movie too. Someone had shared it somewhere and they put it, but I still don't remember.
well, I
There,
mean,
what's that?
I don't know if it was GoBots or Transformers, but I mean, there was like a whole line.
No, no, it was neither of those. It was its own thing, and all they did was turn into rocks.
Oh, jeez.
And I don't think they were robots though. They were just like some kind of creature. And I feel like there
Oh,
was a movie based around it as well. Yeah, someone shared it on Twitter, and then I was like, "Oh my god!" And then it was like just a picture, and then someone else. I think it was Dan Dillon had shared the picture. It was
hmm
like it was one of his threads, and then someone else chimed in with what they were actually called. But for the life of me, I cannot remember.
I mean, that was like 5 years ago or some nonsense like that. So, uh,
But I am sure if you just Googled rocks that turn into people, something will come up. But yeah, so you let me you actually created it and introduced it into the game. It wasn't a player inspired thing.
I mean, that's one of the things that I tend to do. I mean, if I see something and it inspires me to you know to bring something into the game, I'm here for it.
The
You know,
the thing that was kind of cool about familiars in third edition was like they all had a trait that gave you a benefit, but aside from the benefit, it the idea was that the familiar was kind of an extension of your personality. So you could use that kind of as a role playing tool to be like, well, why do I have this kind of familiar? And like, not only that, like, it, mechanically was supported by the fact that, like, you had that trait of that animal. Like, I forget,
mhm.
like, rats might have been like a bonus to stealth. I think like there might have, or like a bonus to your fortitude save, and like a hawk or an owl might have been like a bonus to your your spot, because I think back then it was spot and listen, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Two
Two
separate.
separate skills. You could either see well or hear well, but not both unless you paid for it. That was one of the things that kind of got condensed with 5.8. So you had run your one shot game with the untraditionally arcane, where you use the rules from that it's a one page RPG created by Critical Role.
Yeah, the rule set is called a familiar problem. Mauricia Ray is the one who wrote it, and it was helped designed by Grant Howitt, who's the same designer who did Honey Heist.
Okay.
I had a lot of fun with it. You basically there's 12 different options. Bat, crab, frog or toad, hawk or falcon, lizard, octopus, owl, snake, rat, raven, cat, or weasel. And then like each of those has like their set stat blocks. And for me, I'm like, all right, choose the stat block that you feel best works for you, but you don't have to be, what what the creature type says here. If you
So what did you end up with? We know one of the familiars was a mustache.
So we had a mustache, which was Ordo Wonderbeard. The Robin plays Chessaline, and they initially didn't have a familiar, and due to how things had evolved in game, uh, they actually took the spirit that was trying to implant itself in Chessaline's mind, and they did a ritual to extract that. And it's like, they could just go ahead and toss it out and let it go into the ether and see what happens, or you can bind this and make it be your familiar. So basically, Chessaline has like an imp-sized goblin that is their familiar. Want to say that there was a hawk or a raven. There was some kind of bird. I don't think there was an octopus for some kind of time. I don't know. This was a couple of months ago that we did this. So I greatly apologize, but the game was a lot of fun as they were trying to navigate their way through our arcane junkyard.
So you didn't use the adventure that came with the unfamiliar problem you created your own, or did
There's
you
not
reskin
really
it?
there's not really an adventure here. There is uh basically you're given there's like a roll chart for your mission. Sabotage the villain scheme, locate a lost item, find some hidden treasure, help an adventurer find love, rescue an adventurer left for dead, or slay an overlooked enemy. And there's a basically a double d6 for the location: spooky, overgrown, opulent, very magical, ruined, or ancient, and then dungeon, tower, mansion, castle, temple, or prison. So like I had already established what I had wanted to do
Uh,
with the familiars before I had even gotten this rule set. So like I had all of that stage. So I had it planned. Oh no, you guys all get trapped underneath this thing. And the only thing you can possibly do is kind of call forth your familiar.
and so the familiars had to figure out how to free them.
So the familiars had to go locate the object that their wizards were looking for because they were preoccupied, and then try to help their wizards get free if they weren't out yet. So it was a fun little 2 hour adventure, and we got to try out a cool rule set that hadn't seen before.
Did all the familiars make it?
They did.
And I guess like if technically if they're technically D&D familiars after the adventure's over, you just reconjure them anyway.
Yes, and that was the thing to look at is like no matter what, like there's no lasting damage to the design of this style of game because like the concept of the game is you are the familiar, the animal companion, the thing has the ability to come back with just an expended resource, which I think is a fun way to look at how fifth edition is doing things, and removes the hassle or the frustration of oh, I did this thing and now my pet, my friend is gone. My daughter was literally mortified and crying when they were fighting a froghemoth, and her ranger's animal companion in a previous game was swallowed and killed. And I'm like, dude, all you have to do is expend a spell slot and you get it back. And she's like, what? It's not going forever.
Were you using Tasha's?
It was before they had the spirit of the land.
Yeah, because
So like,
technically, you do not get that beast companion back. You summon a new one.
well, I was not going to go that far.
I remember us specifically joking about about that because it's like, especially because they have such low hit points. It's
Mhm.
like I can just see Peter showing up, because like you keep losing beast companions and summoning new ones. Eventually, the word's going to get out.
That is true. Um, but I was not going to Like, all right, here, let me make you cry some more. Yep, it's gone forever. That's there's no joy in making my daughter cry.
The tears of your players is a thing to
So,
behold.
all right, I'm gonna throw out some resources if you're looking for things.
Yo, hold on real quick. I had to look this up.
All right, go
So
ahead.
in second edition, the wizard got a bonus to their surprise die rolls, and
Mhm.
normal familiars had 2 to 4 hit points plus 1 hit point per caster level, and armor class 7. But let's see. If separated from the caster, no, that's the familiar. It's going to suck for the familiar. Um, if your familiar dies, the wizard must successfully roll an immediate system shock check or die. Even if he survives the check, the wizard loses 1 point from his constitution when the familiar dies.
They lose a point. It's permanently gone.
Yeah, they
Right.
lose. Yeah, they just lose a point of con if you don't die outright from like I think it was a percentage for your system shock under con,
Mhm.
and if you didn't roll under that number, then you were just gonna die.
Yeah.
So,
Now familiars are sacrificial pawns. Like, all right,
yeah, now they just poof and you just get another one.
like, man, I got to spend 10 minutes and conjure another one. Damn it.
10 minutes and 25 gold. At least you can tell the familiar exactly what it's worth to you. 10 minutes and 25 gold. It's like a gift card. I like gift cards. Like you give it to someone you need. Like this is exactly how much you're worth to me.
So, again, precursor. I play a game with kids, and right now the game has 6 players. 5 of them are 16 or younger, and one adult to kind of help guide and steer the campaign along when need be.
Who are you
So,
kidding? Josh just wants to play.
well, that's true, but he's a good purpose of wanting to, besides wanting to play, he's
He's
willing to
like,
play
I'll
with
come
5
and
kids.
help wrangle the kids for you, Ted.
Um, but so therefore I've invested in other books out there that have companions or familiars or what have you that I've picked up through Kickstarter or just bought outright. um, so there's Stibble's Codex of Companions, and this is by Eldermancy. uh, you know,
Yeah, that's Logan from Runesmith. Although I don't
yeah.
think like he had a super popular and YouTube channel that did really well. I don't think he makes videos anymore though. I don't know what he's doing. He's
you
just
know
writing
the,
for
the
Eldermancy maybe.
the artwork in here is pretty damn incredible. There's a lot of options to play with. It's a pretty decent sized book. It's a little over 160 pages. Um, you know, and I mean it's pretty much across all different types of animal things. So you've got aberrations, you've got birds of prey, dinosaurs, uh, you've got section for celestials and constructs and dragons and monstrosities and fiends and fae and elementals, oozes, plants, undead, so on and so forth. It's lots of different things. um lot of great things in here.
I kind of want a gazer familiar.
I've definitely thought about that. I dig the gazer. I've got a handful of gazer minis to play with as well. So I think that would be kind of cool
Well,
to.
because I mean, we didn't even get into the fact there's just certain creatures in the Monster Manual and other books that just have a familiar sidebar,
Mhm.
and like I think those particular creatures operate differently, and like they just have to they just like choose to be your familiar, and then they act as a familiar, and you get some benefits depending on
Right.
what kind
From
they are.
from Metal Weave Games, we've got Awakened. It's a supplement that talks about NPCs and companions. Um, this one is another great game. Andreas Walters. We've I've backed a number of things from him in the past. So this has got not only awakened characters, but more animals and things to be able to use as companions. So a lot of cool things that you
He
can
put
have.
out the baby bestiaries,
Yes.
and uh, and I believe so. I think I had gotten one for my son for like a birthday or something.
Hmm.
So he knew of Displacer Beast from being in that book. So like when we were playing D&D and I actually used the Displacer Beast, he's like, "It's a phase cat." I'm like,
uh,
"No, this isn't the knockoff. This is the original."
and then if you're not looking to go with a rules light version, uh, there is also Unfamiliar, which is this is a rule set for playing, the tiny beasts and what have you. This is clearly, soft cover book. Is a little over 100 pages, color art on the interior, and you've got a lot of different options that are in here as well. So,
Who's that from? I think I have an idea who it might be from, but
uh, so this is written and illustrated by Jerry Joe Seltzer. I'm not really seeing a company logo or any of that kind of stuff.
okay, it's not who I thought it was anyway. So that's okay.
So I'm pretty sure that one, came across my Facebook feed for a Kickstarter at some point in time, and I'm like, yep, that fits the profile of the things that I back. Uh,
Yeah. Well, before we go any further, we're just about we're pretty much the halfway mark. So it's a great time to thank the sponsor, Easy Roller Dice. Whether it's your first set of dice or your 1 millionth set of dice, Easy Roller Dice for all your dice rolling needs. Down in the description, you can find a link for that, as well as a one-time coupon code for 25% off. So, I mean, between me and Ted, we own like a bajillion Easy Roller Dice. Although my number keeps decreasing as my wife has discovered D&D in the hobby, and her dice pile keeps growing from the Easy Roller dice because she likes all the pretty ones, for
all of
sure.
these roller dice are pretty.
Also, if you want to play D&D with me or Ted, but want to do it in a castle in the UK, you can do that too. There's a link down there to sign up for our tables. We still have some spots left. Jump in there before they're all gone. That is next July, the 8th through the 12th. You can hang out with us for like 4 days playing D&D and just hanging out in a castle and having a good time. And
Good
then
food, good times, good people.
good times, good people. And also Jeremy Crawford will be there, so you might be able to play in a game of his as well.
Indeed.
He'll be running one shots, I believe. Um, then PAX Unplugged is this coming weekend. And me and Ted will be out and about, but look for us in the play areas around 2 p.m. Uh, throughout the weekend because we will be running Zoo Mafia. If you want to check it out and play and see what it's all about, and also get your set of Zoo Mafia dice. We have our prototypes that we'll be handing out. They got the Zoo Mafia characters on them, and you can check out the game. Ted will be running games. I'll be running games. So we'll be there, and also just hanging out. You can't miss Ted. He's got like this huge. It's like it sticks out like, and he takes up like the whole aisle. Nerdarchy logo that's emblazoned upon Ted's chest. He's like Iron Man without the cool powers.
Well, I got no cool Iron Man powers, but I do have my cool leather vest that I wear. It does have the Nerdarchy N emblazoned upon my chest, so that you can spot me and be able to come play games and say hi and whatever have you. Um, Definitely a lot of fun, but also around the middle of the time, we kind of go do through some of the admin business. And as some of you out there might be aware, there's a whole new book that's coming out. Have you ever heard of Dragonlance? So we got some copies to throw up on the giveaway shelf. But more importantly than that, we got this big hefty box.
Yeah,
Is the
with a little
deluxe
ding
set.
in it, unfortunately, but everything inside should be intact.
It took some shipping damage, unfortunately. Included within is a special deluxe Dragonlance experience. It had a foil cover of a unique but a third print than what is on these books.
Yeah, it's funny. The box is so big and dense it muffles Ted.
Oh my god!
I
So
can
I'll try
pretty
to
much mostly hear you.
I'll make sure I talk around it. But beyond that, there is a exclusive DM screen included within the box, as well as the board game Warriors of Kryn. So inside that, it's got all the different things you need for the game. It's got minis, it's got all the plastic bits, it's got the rules, it's got a set of dice. So there's a lot of stuff there. Well, the box, handful of copies of the book is all going on the giveaway shelf to give to some lucky Nerdarchy fan at some point in time in the future.
Yep, and we'll probably maybe do some videos and talk about it. Or so we used to do these Mondays. We're now doing them Sunday. We won't be doing a Friday live chat because we'll be at PAX Unplugged. I don't know. Are we? We haven't discussed this yet, but are we doing the Sunday night live chat?
That's going to be entirely up to you. I am running around, PAX all weekend, and potentially working on Sunday. I don't know if you're going to have it within you. If you want to do it, I'm here for it. If not, then we can call it quits.
Yeah, I'm not sure because part of me wants to do it and talk about Dragonlance, but part of me also is like, sometimes I end up hanging out with people that stay like the extra day or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. Look for the link.
Look for their link. Pay attention to social media and see what's going on.
But even better, is anybody in the chat going to be at PAX Unplugged?
Chime on in.
Come hang out with us. So PAX Unplugged is a pretty fun convention. Also, I always like to point out it is the best convention for food.
I'm fond of PAX Unplugged for a number of reasons. Yes, it's smaller than Gen Con, but it's far more local, and it's a lot easier for you and I to be able to make it too. So
yeah, I was just talking to Professor Dungeon Master. He's like, "Are you guys going to be there? What are you guys doing? Where are you going to be at?" So at some point we'll be hanging out with. I'm gonna try and corner Professor Dungeon Master and get him to play some Zoo Mafia. Him and Brandon from Runehammer.
I'm gonna get to meet Asa, from my untraditionally arcane game. He's gonna be on his way into the East Coast in the very near future.
Yeah, I imagine we all will get to meet him. Or are you gonna hoard Asa to yourself?
I'm not gonna hoard Asa. I mean, unless Carlos decides to, he's gonna keep them all to himself. But
it's always a possibility. Yeah. Yeah, our friend Carlos also plays in a couple of our games now. Untraditionally arcane. He's now plays in the Those Bastards game. Actually happens to live in Philadelphia, and Asa is going to be couch surfing.
Yeah, I kind of bullied Asa into it, and
you bullied him. Ugh,
well, he might not say it that way, but I kind of feel that way.
Yeah.
In that game, I met Robin a long time ago when we went out to Ohio for a convention. I've met Fragginator a couple of times now because he took a trip out to the East.
Because he shows up on your doorstep.
Well, he has done that a couple of times, but it's all right. It's cool. He was invited. Then Carlos, of course, is local. We've been gaming with him for a long time in person. Well, I was just fortunate, back in September, able to meet Jake, who I've been gaming with for years online. Both before the RPG Crate game and then all of the transitions of that. But we were kind of gaming in the one shot group on and off even before that. So
yeah, I was really disappointed that I didn't get a chance to meet Jake. I forget what I had going on, but I had something going on that day.
So it was like, all right, this is awesome. So as we kind of looked at, Ace is the only person I haven't met. I'm like, all right, how are we gonna make this happen? And
well, you could have went out to Washington and then swung by Wizards of the Coast.
Oh, I mean, yeah, but like, he's like, well, where are you at? I'm like, oh, I'm on the East Coast. He's like, well, I got a whole bunch of people I want to see on the East Coast. And kind of jokingly, I'm like, well, you could come to PAX Unplugged. So like off air, we kind of like were having this conversation. He's like, man, I could swing it, but it'd be rough trying to find a place to crash. And Carlos was like, just crash here.
Yeah.
Didn't run it by his fiance. Didn't check anything. Yeah, I got a couch.
Fatima is just gonna come home and be like, "What is this? What are you talking about, babe? This sleeping here?" As she kicks Asa.
So, it was just kind of cool. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't feel like, I did anything to instigate that it had to happen. Like I wanted it to happen because it's always cool to be able to meet my gaming friends in person. Uh, so I was like, all right, this is happening. Cool.
And Asa has not played Zoo Mafia yet.
Asa has not played Zuma.
So I'm against bullying, but you should definitely bully him into playing Zoo Mafia.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I can totally try to wrangle nicely. Better word choice.
Yeah. So I think when I think of familiars, I think of cute and cuddly kind of critters, right? Well, this past Friday, I played a game of Zoo Mafia, and we had some cute and cuddly critters and some not so cute and cuddly critters in that game. So we saw some new animals. So we had a red fox. I've seen a red fox before. We had a walrus, which was definitely the first walrus.
Yeah.
So we decided that the walrus exhibit was on loan from the Seven Kingdoms aquarium that's on the other side of the city that we've kind of been running in big city USA anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had a goat he's like, I want to be a goat, but not like a cool goat, just like a regular goat from the petting zoo. And then we had a sugar glider. So red the red fox, which was our safe cracker. I think Wilbur the walrus, which is our goon, and pardon me, Clet or Cleo was the goat, and he was our button person, which I think we're just going to shorten that to button. We just haven't officially done it yet.
Yep. Yep.
And then Sugar the Sugar Glider was our grifter. So it was and like that player was just like, I don't know what I want to play, but I want to play some kind of marsupial, a cute marsupial, and I didn't know that sugar gliders were marsupials.
Yeah. Sugar glides are pretty awesome. I know a little bit here and there. They're one of those things that are on the potential for me to adopt at some point in time in my life because
So my understanding is like you can have them as pets, but they don't make good pets because they're nocturnal and they're
mm-hmm.
noisy.
Yep.
So basically, they like scream all night.
Yeah, I've heard
But
some
you
of
can
that.
throw them like a paper airplane. So I mean, there's that.
So I kind of had a little bit of my own. I don't know whether cute and cuddly would be a way to call it, but I ran my kids game this past weekend myself, and we had a lot of crazy start. The campaign. I'll give the short and sweet version,
Uh,
but the players decided that they wanted to start their own chicken farm in the middle of the city, and
would
that
you
they
allow someone to have a chicken as a familiar?
if somebody wanted to have a chicken as a familiar, I would totally not have a problem with it because like chickens are rather, rather light and rather small and weak in the stat block spectrum. So if you
Yeah.
as a familiar, no problems. Uh,
I had I was using one of the I think I was using the playtest artificer because
mhm,
he still had the boomstick and he
mhm.
was a kobold. He was all about the chickens, uh, and more specifically making suicide chickens.
Oh
He
wow.
would strap like alchemist fire to them and send them in.
Well, the one player, no hard guesses here, but my daughter bought a chicken once she realized that you could. She paid way too much money for it.
Uh,
There's
it
one
was a
happy
pedigree.
vendor.
It wasn't a regular chicken. It was one of those big chickens that has all the the long feathers and they just look super cool.
Um, so I guess that spurred the conversation of like we could buy a whole bunch of chickens and then sell eggs and what have you. So they decided they're gonna, take over a warehouse, buy a whole bunch of chickens, and turn it into an egg farm. I'm like, all right, I didn't have anything better planned. If this is really what you guys want to do, let's go for it. So the one character finds a warehouse, stumbles inside, stealths like crazy, but can't perceive a damn thing. I'm like, well, you're gonna make chickens. I gotta make this hilarious. And for whatever reason, there's a damn cockatrice in this building. They have a fight. The dice go crazy. The cockatrice can't hit this dude to save his life. And after the crit didn't kill the cockatrice, he's like, oh man, how on earth am I going to get away from this thing? Winds up befriending the cockatrice, rolls a nat 20 on a persuasion check after he rolled like a 21 or a 23 on an animal handling with disadvantage. It was insane. So I'm like, all right, fine. Now you got a cockatrice that's following you around. Puts a leash on the thing. He's walking through town. I'm like, all right, you got to do something to try and convince people that you're not just walking around with some kind of monster. Rolls another natural 20 on a deception check. And,
It's
no,
my
it's a
service.
chicken.
It's my service cockatrice.
No, he was just basically like, no, you're wrong. This is just a chicken. Why are you making chicken?
The dog.
So, the dog.
Yeah.
So
Well, you haven't seen this breed before?
They get the whole chicken farm set up. There's a lot to get there, but we'll streamline through that. But they leave their own pen that happens to be right near where the chickens are. And the bulk of the penning is done by like essentially they're using chicken wire. They talked about like metal fencing. I'm like, all right, the cockatrice has just pushed its way through, and it's not eating the chickens, but it's turning the chicken eggs into cockatrice eggs. I don't know what the lore of a cockatrice is and how it's supposed to happen, but I thought this was cool. Uh, so they decide, all right, well, we don't want this to happen. So they put the cockatrice somewhere else. And it again succeeds on its check to muscle its way through the loose floorboards and gets into yet another pen. We ended with, the second pen having 5 cockatrice eggs. And they're like, we're just going to leave it in there, see what happens. So they've got a whole chicken farm. They've got a cockatrice. Meanwhile, the barbarian in town decides he wants to try and the barbarian is a warforged and was made by the artificer in the party. He's like, my master, my creator, wants a creature of his own, and in this place, reptilian creatures are the dominant things outside the city. And I'm like, well, I want to make a new creature that is kind of like the nuisance animal. So I crossed your typical monkey or chimpanzee with like a gecko, and I called it a Monzard. So of course, there's got to be a Monzard dealer somewhere in town. So the barbarian spent the whole day trying to find a Monzard dealer just to buy one for the artificer. So 2 new creatures have joined the party where they said categorically, we are not going to have, a party full of animal companions.
Well, apparently someone did not get the memo.
So I find it comical that, it's a kid's game. I knew animal things were a possibility, but no one's complaining about the Monzard. No one's complaining about the cockatrice. But, when my daughter showed up and she's like, I've got a pet mouse because I'm an urchin, and I've got a badger because it's my familiar. It's like, oh God, not this again.
Yeah. I feel like kids' games go that way, though. They just like to collect things.
Sure. It's just a lot of fun to kind of have the crazy antics. And you want an animal companion, you want a familiar, sure, there's going to be advantages and things that you can do with it, but it's going to have its own sets of complications and things that are going to get in the way at times, and it's going to be part of the story. So if you're willing to accept that part, I'm willing to accept the other part.
So do you have any plans where that's going?
So
Or
if you happen to be a player in my kids game, plug your ears for the next 2 minutes. I rolled a check, and there is an egg that got stashed away in the on the first night. So there's going to be more cockatrices that happen, and if they don't secure the warehouse, the cockatrices are going to get out. Um, so it's not gonna quite be the same goblin problem from the last campaign. It's gonna be much worse.
Oh no, it's gonna be much worse. Now, I just hope it ends in pitchforks and torches.
I mean, after all, they pretty much stole the warehouse and
Yeah.
forged to say that they own it. Uh, so I'm here for whatever damages and problems that are there, because like nobody like said, "Oh, I'm going to thoroughly check and make sure this or that." It was all like, "All right." I was rolling dice behind the screen, and no one was giving me the shifty eye. I'm like, excellent, especially because they're about to like head out of town for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Uh, Unless they got somebody who like knows how to deal with cockatrices, or knows what to do, or is given like highly specific instructions, it's going to cause some problems.
Yeah. I mean, as a DM, it's fun to say yes to those things, but then also maybe blow it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like they're looking to make some copper and silver off of their little adventure. Whereas the two players who went in to the arena one of the days is like, "Oh, look, you made 2 silver on your egg extravaganza. We made 200 gold.
Yeah.
Your adventure is absolutely the way to go." I mean, it was a hard pressed fight, and they had to like use a lot of resources, and the
What did they fight?
so there was a combination of plant creatures, and I kind of did some Voltroning nonsense.
Uh,
I don't remember exactly what it was, but there were two creatures that started off that were like a challenge 2 or a challenge 3, and they had hit pretty hard. And when each of them died, but due to the nature of the way the challenge was, whoever did the killing blow healed like a die 6, because it was like they were doing radiant damage. Um, Let me see if I can try and find what monsters it was initially. Um, so when the second one died, then like um, their like woody exterior broke apart, and um, they grew into like another mini that I happen to have. And
of course you do.
I mean, I just basically reached into my plant bag and said, "All right, uh, sorry." So I think it was an astral blight. No, it was definitely not that one. That was too weak. This one, nope. Um,
An astral blight. I don't even know what that is. I know what blights are.
yeah, well, there's plant creatures that do radiant damage. It's like they've got this, you know, um,
You
you know,
sure? That sounds like some fake news to me.
it's definitely not this high. Where the flip are they?
There aren't that many plant creatures. It's one of
The
the smaller lists.
it's like 4 pages here. But so they fought them, and they were hitting for radiant damage, which
Uh,
definitely caused a problem for the um the barbarian, who's like, "Well, I'm raging and I'm getting hit." Now, luckily, he was playing the um
Dude, it's the Aratuk from Spelljammer. It's on the first page. It's like the first like three monsters.
I'd
There,
sort of
there can't be other monsters that also do radiant or other plant creatures that also do radiant damage.
so that when they filled those things, it released the radiant energy, and they got healed for a d6.
Yeah.
and it kind of came into um a more just natural attacking kind of creature. um and then once those things were defeated, I it's definitely not a shambling mound. I'm not I can't talk and research monsters at the same time. It's just not possible. So when those things died, like they reached out a hand towards each other and they combined into a third creature. They like stood up and they came, and I used this thing that had like a beak attack. Whatever stat block I used, it was supposed to have multi attack,
Uh,
but because I've now had them fight two other sets of creatures, I'm like, all right, this thing is just gonna go, with the one attack. But they did a considerable amount of damage. And my I was kind of showcasing that Teddy's character had, or my son's character had, an absorbent armor class.
okay.
He tanked the attacks like crazy. The barbarian was a wild magic barbarian, and he rolled for his rage the teleporting one.
Oh, nice.
So he would teleport away at the end of the attack, so he wasn't getting damaged.
And
Um,
just let the paladin soak everything,
so
right?
he let the paladin soak it. Um, and the paladin only needed to use shield once, because that's the build he's going with. The high armor class plus magic initiate for shield.
So you played that game Friday, right?
Yeah.
That's the same day I played the Zoo Mafia game.
Yep.
And, and I thought we were gonna have a mob wipe in the very opening scene, because in Zoo
Yeah, you're telling me.
Mafia the group is called a mob, and mob is slang for gang in the 1920s, 1930s, which I didn't know. Well, it was funny too. Like a bunch of the players kept like looking up like 1920s and 1930s slang to throw out during the game, so that was a lot of fun. And we also had a brand new player that never played any RPGs ever, and
That is awesome.
they said that they felt it was pretty easy for them to catch on and figure out what was going on with the game. So that made me feel really good, and I was super happy.
So all in all, lots of fun gaming. Sadly, we had to call off our Shadow of the Demon Lord game that was supposed to happen this weekend.
Yeah, actually, it worked out for me kind of good, because we filmed Saturday, which is not a normal day for us to film videos. And then I came home and downloaded and uploaded all the videos, and that would not have been able to happen had we gamed.
Wow.
So it actually kind of worked out for me. Although I do miss not playing, because we didn't play last month either, because we did you ran Zoo Mafia for us,
Hmm.
and that's the Saturday where we play Shadow of the Demon Lord, and
Yep.
so we like to try and work in some other non D&D games into the D&D mix, but we still usually play at least. Well, we have a weekly game with those bastards normally, which we missed this past week due to an illness. And then we usually play two monthly D&D games, and then you play the kids game whenever it happens.
Whenever we can make it happen, which we might see another game at the end of December.
And you,
Uh,
you usually kind of tie it into the holidays, right? Like,
we
because
tie
they
it
don't have the
into
kids don't have schools.
Yeah, we try and do it on a day when the kids from three different areas don't have school. It takes
Yeah.
a bit of planning, but
And then you play your untraditionally arcane game once a month,
mhm, which
generally.
is
I have a
which
Saturday
sad.
morning game that can be kind of sporadic at times that I play.
And sadly, the untraditionally arcane game, like so many others, like we weren't able to play in November, and we're taking off all of December through most of our games except for the one that we do here on Tuesdays. So like missing out on a session is like, man, when it's only once a month and you're taking another month off. feel like it hurts.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you gonna do?
But you got to deal with life, and I'm confident that all of the games that are on a temporary hiatus will resume in full force after the turn into 2023, and great things will happen thereafter.
For sure. So we're right up at the end. Anything final that we didn't go over?
So I would just say that familiars are a lot of fun if you stretch it out into animal companions. Uh, you know, totally allow players to do what is within the confines of what the creature should be able to do. Allow them to develop a personality and be another thing in the world. But the thing that you always have to remember is with animal companions, familiars, they aren't the player characters. Your player can have a say in it, but it's another NPC that they kind of guide the actions of. But the personality is yours to play with. So play with it, have fun. If the players really get into it, let them have fun with it, but let it create some complications and problems at times too.
Yeah, and like that's it. Like it should be a double-edged sword that cuts both ways, but for fun, not necessarily for screwing over
Yeah,
your players.
yeah. I'm not saying be a jerk here. I'm saying
Yeah.
have it, and like it's not a you don't need to try and balance the scales, but like every time that there's something that I'm like, oh man, having the familiar really made this over here so much easier or what have you. Like, all right, well, maybe worry about the chip on the other side and say, well, how can the familiar create a problem that the players have to solve? Every so often, maybe once every 3 times this kind of, really good thing happens, just to be like, all right, it's not all, sweets and candy.
I kind of want to do something now, like where, like when the wizard dismisses their familiar, the next time they go to summon it, they can't. They can feel the connection, but something's preventing it from coming to them,
Mm-hmm.
and have
Mm-hmm.
them have to go rescue their familiar.
Yeah, I mean,
Because most of the mostly that doesn't apply in 5e, but I feel like if you kind of grab it at the source, you can kind of dangle it that way.
absolutely.
So, well, with that, we'll be back Tuesday night for those bastards. If the gods of D&D smile upon us, and then we may or may not be back next Sunday night because of PAX Unplugged. It's still a bit up in the air. With this being our local con, it kind of like can be a little bit more chaotic and random in the sense that we don't really know what's going on. But if you follow us on social media and also on YouTube, if we go live, you'll know about it. If you happen to be at PAX Unplugged, remember to look for us in those free play areas. We'll be there around 2 p.m. Eastern time. I guess I don't have to say Eastern time because it actually will be the time there, and we are in the East. But you can come find me, me and or Ted, to play some Zoo Mafia or just hang out. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.